Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about in section 3 is slope. And just in case you don't recall, the slope formula is over here. Oftentimes, you've talked about the equation of a line in what they call the slope-intercept format. So that would be y equals mx plus b. Your calculator has two other ways it likes to talk about it. It likes to go with y equals a plus bx, or y equals ax plus b. It doesn't really matter which letters they use. Whatever's in front of the x, that's your slope. And then the other thing is your y-intercept. So this m thing here is talking about your slope. And again, those subscripts that you see with the y's and the x's, the 2's and the 1's, they refer to whether it was the first point or the second point. So looking at letter A, as I look at the slope in the yellow highlight, I know that this first point is x1, y1. The second point is x2, y2, because it was the first and the second point. And then I use the formula to find my slope. So as I find my slope, what I would do is on the top, I put the y things. So I have negative 2 minus, and then I have the 3 from the first point, over my second x, which is negative 6, minus my first x, which is 4. And I get negative 5 over negative 10. And of course, in this class, you will always simplify. And so you get positive 1/2. And so this is just using the slope formula. Questions? So in these examples, the A that we did together, and then the B that I had you do, and then the last two, you always take the y2 minus the y1 over the x2 minus the x1. In part C, if you end up with something that says 0 on the top, another number on the bottom, your slope is 0. If in part D, you get something that has 0 on the bottom, another number on top, that slope is undefined. Sometimes people in the past might have told you it's called no slope. That's not true. It's a vertical line. That's why you're getting that. That's an undefined slope. It's not no slope. There is a slope, we just can't talk about it because it's infinitely large. So 0 on the top, slope of 0, 0 on the bottom, slope is undefined. 0 over 0, who knows what's going on. In number 2, we see a problem that will be a very typical problem when you move on to calculus, whether it's regular or AP. They use this format quite a bit. It's called the point-slope form of a line. So down here below, oh darn it. Down here below is the equation of a point-slope form of a line. The reason they call it that is because they're going to give you a point and they're going to give you a slope. And what's really nice is it's very easy to write an equation. And you can leave it in that format if you want to. So in Algebra 2, you might have wrote it a certain way. In this class, we're going to write it a different way. It's really the same thing. As I look at number 2, what I see is that they give me the slope of negative 2 and the point 3, negative 1. So if I put it into the equation, it looks like the following. Y minus negative 1 equals negative 2 times x minus 3. And as I look at where these different pieces are coming from, the slope of 2, which is negative, is in front of the parentheses. The x value 3 was in the parentheses after the minus sign. And the negative 1, which was the y value from the point, is with the y on the left side of the equation. Now what you probably did in the past in an Algebra 2 class is you probably moved that minus 1 over to the right hand side of the equation and you had y equal. So if you want to put it in your calculator, remember you have to get y alone. So you can always do that. But on our test, if you want to write it in the point-slope form of the line, what you would write is y plus 1 equals negative 2 parentheses x minus 3 as your final answer. Now whenever you're trying to do the point-slope form of a line, you need two things. You need a point and you need a slope. In number 3, they give us 2 points. We don't need both of them for that equation, but the reason they give us 2 is we have to find the slope first. So step 1 is I'm going to find the slope m. So my slope m would be negative 10 minus 5 over 3 minus negative 2. Or in other words, negative 15 over 5 or negative 3. So the whole purpose of that was so I could use the point-slope form of a line. At this point, it doesn't really matter which point you use. I like to use the smaller numbers I like to use ones that have zeros in it. I like to use ones that have no negatives. In this case, since there's no zeros and both have negatives, I'm going to use the smaller one. So when I write my equation of the line, I'm going to go with the first point, negative 2, 5. Doesn't matter which one you use, they're both correct. So I will have y minus 5 equals negative 3 times parentheses x plus 2. Because I knew ahead of time I was going to have a minus, which gives me plus inside the parentheses. So in the problem number 4 down below, when we're trying to figure out which one's the independent variable x and which one's the dependent variable y, we look at what the question asks. It says use your equation to predict the value of the car at a certain point in time. So this value that I'm talking about, which is the dollars, that's going to be my y value or my dependent value. It's going to depend on the age of the car. So when I write down ordered pairs, it's important to understand that so I know which order to put them in because I'm looking for the y thing. So as I do this, I notice that they have a car for $15,000 in 1995. That means my first ordered pair would be 1995, comma, 15,000. Because that's telling me that in the year 1995, I had a value of 15,000. My second ordered pair then would be 2002 and 1,000. And as you can see, cars depreciate very quickly. So it says write a linear equation that models this data. So I have 2 points. I need a point and I need a slope. I need a slope first before I can even do this. So I'm going to find the slope next. As I find the slope, I take y2, which is 1,000, minus y1, which is 15,000. And I put that over 2002, which is my first x value, minus 1995, which is my second one. So I have negative 14,000 divided by 7?
Yeah.
Or in other words, negative 2,000. What this really tells me, this is my slope. This tells me my car is going down by $2,000 each year. That's what it's telling me. If I write my equation, I'm going to use the second point because it has smaller numbers. So I would have y minus 1,000 equals negative 2,000 times, bless you, x minus 2002. And it says we're going to predict what happened in 1999. So what I can do now as I look at this thing is I can get my calculator, and in my y equals, I need to type in my equation. Now I can't have that, whatever that number was on the left-hand side, that 1,000 over there, so I got to move it to the right. So I really have negative 2,000, parentheses, x minus 2002. And then I move the 100 or the 1,000, excuse me, over to the other side, so that I can put it in my calculator. Hopefully I have the right equation there. I'm just going to check. Unfortunately, it doesn't show up on my screen. All right, cool. And then I go to graph it, just because I want to see the graph. And oh man, dumb. Why is that dumb? Windows sucks. The Windows sucks. Look at the X values. The X values are 1,995 and 2002. So if I'm not paying attention to that, I'm totally screwed. So I'm going to go from maybe 1990, and then I'm going to go up to maybe 2005, because I'm talking about the years of the car. And then when I talk about the Y values, I'm in the thousands of dollars. So it's kind of stupid if I'm going from negative 10 to 10. So I'm going to go with maybe 0 as my minimum value of my car, which means it's worth nothing, to a maximum value of maybe, I don't know, 15,000, because that was the biggest number I saw. And now I can see a graph. And you can see the line going down on the right-hand side. But this doesn't really tell me the value in 1999, does it? So what I can do is what I talked about yesterday. I can go second table set. I can make sure I'm in Ask Auto because I just want to find out about 1999. And I go into my table and I type in 1999. And it tells me my car was worth $7,000. Now this is, not, of course, not the only way to find out that value, but it's one way that you can find out the value of your car using an equation. If you wanted to algebraically, of course, what you could have done is you could have stuck the number 1999 in for the x. 1999 minus 2002, find out the number, multiply it by negative 2,000, move the 1,000 to the other side, and you would find out it's 7,000. So the big idea is in the end here, you need to know that the value of the car is $7,000 in 1999. Okay, and number 5, I want to show you something that I learned a long time ago. I'm going to say this a lot in this class. Math is the study of patterns. Once you see the pattern, math is super easy. So I'm pretty fast to find patterns, and there's some things I really like to show people that I found that I think makes math easier. And here's one of them. Whenever they talk about x-intercepts and y-intercepts, if you ever have an equation that has x junk, y junk, equals, and then a number, oftentimes the equation is set up to do this following thing. I make a table. You know how yesterday we were talking about tables and going -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Whenever you're trying to find intercepts and you do an XY table, what they're really talking about is what happens when you shove in a 0 for the x value. So if I shove in a 0 for the x value here, what really is happening is the x thing disappears. And you know that the y equals 8. And then so that's your y-intercept. That's where you're hitting the y-axis. And then if I put in a 0 for the y thing, that means the y thing disappears, and I have 4x equals 8. Or in other words, 4 times something is 8. So that something has to be 2. And now you have the x-intercept. Now our graph doesn't go up to 8, so I'd have to extend it, of course. And if I graph this thing, I have a y-intercept of 0, 8. And I have an x-intercept of 2, 0. And I draw my line. So here's the line. If I'm looking for the x-intercept, I'd go, hey, the x-intercept is 2, 0. I was talking about the y-intercept. The y-intercept is 0, 8. Make sure you get them in the correct order. If they're asking about the y-intercept, there should be a number for the y. And then they're asking about the slope. So let's talk about the slope. Look at that purple line. Is the line going up or down? Down. So you know it's going to be a negative slope, right? And I know that there are only 2 numbers in my chart. There's a y number and there's an x number, right? 8 and 2. And slopes are y things over x things. Y minus y over x minus x. So if I look at the y number, 8, and I look at the x number, 2, 8 divided by 2 is 4, and I'm going down. So I know that my slope is -4. Okay, so in part B, we follow the same process with our x and y's, put zeros in for x. You have 4y equals 12, which means the y value should be a 3. And if you do the same and put a 0 in for the y value, you have 3x equals 12, which means your x is going to be a 4. So as I look at my picture, I have 0, 3, which is my y-intercept, and I have 4, 0, which is my x-intercept. And I see that my line is going down again. I'm going to write out what my intercepts are, so I know that my x-intercept is a coordinate 4, 0. I know that my y-intercept is 0, 3. And my slope, since my line is going down, I know it's going to be negative. And then I just put the y value, 3, over the x value, 4, and I'm done. Okay, the next two are kind of nice.